गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गनर शॉट। गनर शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to talk of something very interesting. China's decline is now official. I've been saying for a long time that China is on the path to decline. Many people have said, no, what are you talking of? It's all nonsense. But I've been very clear. It's only a matter of time. People say, look, they are the biggest EV sellers and they do this, they do that. They have so much technology and all that, and they have such a big army, everything. And then how can you say that the world's number two superpower is declining? Well, I'm not saying it. It's what the Chinese are saying. If you read the Chinese, if you know how to read the Chinese, it's very clearly there. And that's what I'm going to put across to all of you today. In a very simplistic manner. The markers are there. The Chinese themselves are saying it. It's up to us to believe it or not. Okay, let's start. Recently this news came out, in People's Daily. It says China can accept a GDP growth of less than 5%. Why? Why this? Because at the beginning of this year, the Chinese Communist Party had set a goal of around 5%. They've done everything, stimulus, X, Y, Z, everything, they're fudging everything. After that, also, their growth is not reaching 5%. And that's what they're preparing China for and the world for, that will not. But the world knows. Okay. But look at it from another viewpoint. Few years back, and I'll show it to you, the dates, everything. People said, when I started speaking of Chinese population decline, said, no, Chinese population decline, everyone knows it. It will happen by 2030. China has done enough to cater for this problem. But suddenly, within a year, it's a crisis. Then hardly, 2 days goes by, 3 days goes by when this topic doesn't come up in their media. Then look at that, about 3 years back, of 3.5, 4 years back maybe, the Evergrande crisis came up. Evergrande is in problem, debt, and they're not able to come up with their coupon rates, they're not able to deliver flats and all that. So I went into the detail and I said, look, there's a problem. And then I said, look, is this the portent of a decline? People said, no, what are you talking? There's just one. China's got so many property, behemoths. No problem. Come 2 years down the line, the property has collapsed. It's collapsed. People say, no, they're managing it. It'll be a slow collapse and all. It's not a slow collapse. It's a collapse. Population, everything. So when Chinese give this indication, there's a tail behind. And that tail is what I'm going to tell you today. And the way I understand it. And I'm very clear that this is how it will play out. Okay. What does this article say? Let's go over that first. Right? And let me make it bigger for you so that you are clear as to what they have said. They said China can accept a growth of less than 5%. That's fine. And very interestingly, they've said there's no need for worship of speed. It's counterintuitive to say this, which means that they've been worshipping speed all this while. Now they say, don't go fast. Let's go slow. You know why they're saying don't go fast? Because they can't go fast. The words they choose tells you that there's a problem. There's a major problem. And they say the focus of our economy is on qualitative improvements and reasonable quantitative growth. It's not happening. The quantitative growth is just not happening. Even the quality is, suspect. Then they say, if we do not break free from the worship of speed and continue to expand blindly and launch projects indiscriminately, even if it temporarily boosts growth, it will come at the cost of exhausting future growth potential. Very loaded statement. It indicates that so far they've been doing exactly that and they've exhausted the future growth potential. They're accepting it. It's an acceptance. We have to read the, writing on the wall or smell the tea leaves or whatever it is. There's a problem there. They're admitting People's Daily, which is the official mouthpiece of China, says domestic consumption growth is still weak and it is increasingly difficult to stabilize investment. I mean, these words are not simple to come out there. Okay? And they also are aware that the external environment is not good. Certain countries may escalate their containment and suppression effect against us. Very serious, all this. Very clearly, they're having a major problem. And I don't think they have a way out of it. There's just no way out of it. I've read a whole lot of economists. I've read geopolitical figures. I've read China experts, everything. No one seems to be giving a way out for China. The only way out for China has to be by shrinking the GDP. And that is politically not acceptable to China. Now, how do you shrink the GDP and still grow and all that? You read what Michael Pettis, who's based in Tsinghua University in China, even today he's put out some tweets on this, says, is that you have to accept the fact that if you want to kickstart consumption, stop investment, stop supply side injection. If you stop supply side injection, the GDP will fall. It's only then that you start giving money to people and let them consume. But giving money to people is anathema in the Chinese dictionary. They can't make rich people politically. Politically, China as a state is a rich state with poor people. If this is changed, communism will fail. Please understand why I'm saying decline. And if you don't understand it, then, well, all the best. Oh, yesterday, this article comes out. There are two economists who have been banned from the social media. Their names are not there. I don't know if those chaps are alive or not. That's not come out. But definitely, these two chaps have vanished. And why have they vanished? Understand this. If you understand that, then the rest, everything is clear. Right. The first chap, Gao Shan Wen, he is the chief economist at SDIC Securities. And he says that China's economic growth figures have been overstated by 3 percentage points annually over the past several years. All something which we have all been saying so far. That they, poodle fake the figures. This someone is saying from inside. And this was a man who was doing investments for this firm. And he was wildly popular on WeChat. People used to follow his advice. And the next thing which he said, if economic data is inaccurate, economic growth figures appear overstated. If the growth data is credible, employment figures seem understated. See this. Okay? There is unemployment. If there is unemployment in mandi hai in Naukri, how can economy grow? If your economy is grown, how can your unemployment be there? Now they're saying it. Okay? Inflation, employment, and GDP, along with the effects of the real estate bubble, align with the reported loss of 47 million urban jobs. He's linked up the jobs with inflation and GDP. He's put all this out in their social media. Result, he's banned. Okay, what does the next chap say? He says this chap is Fu Peng. He's the chief economist in a brokerage firm. He says China needs to bite the bullet in preparation for an inevitable stall. He says the Chinese economy is stalling. It can't be big because these chaps managed people's funds and they're advising people. It's their business to advise people, and they're saying so. And they're plain talking. They're known for their plain talking and they're very popular. The biggest problem with China's redistribution of wealth, if we don't do this, we will end up like Japan over the past 35 years. So this man is talking of Japanification. The redistribution of wealth is required to kickstart consumption. If you do redistribution of wealth, your GDP will go down. That's the first thing which will happen. It will recover, but it will take 5 to 10 years to recover. Will the Chinese Communist Party have the political, weight, or rather the political strength to overcome this problem? I don't think so. This is my view. Right? Okay. Then I found this very interesting article in Yikai Global. There's a chap called Mark Kruger. He writes for them regularly. This is what's wrong with the Chinese economy. And a lot of written thing is there, but I'll go over the graphs which he has shown. Because those graphs in this are very, 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 very illustrative and very, 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 very intuitive and instructive. Yes, see this graph. This is the contribution to GDP growth. The one in the middle, the blue one, this blue one is the consumption, and the orange is investment. Okay, and exports are in green. So if you see the 24 one, or you are seeing what? Consumption coming down regularly over a period of time from 2023 down. Consumption is slowly reducing. See here, 2023 5.4 to 4.6 to 4.2 to 3.9 to now 2.2. It's gone down even more. Investment is increasing. So you are producing more, which people can't buy and eat because they don't have the capability to do so. And your exports you're trying to increase. That's what's happening in China. Okay. Then this came out yesterday or day before. This is the consumer inflation rate. If you see here, it's now gone down to almost zero. Consumer inflation is just not there. Consumer inflation will come only if people buy. They're not buying. They don't have the money, they don't have the jobs, they don't have the will to do so, whatever. And traditionally, Chinese have been poor consumers. Right? It's not a consumption-based economy. It's an export-based economy. It's an investment-based economy. We all know that it's a manufacturing-based economy. They manufacture things for others, not for themselves. And they're not prepared to buy it for themselves. Okay. And this CPI has hit a 5-month low. And this is all despite the stimulus. The stimulus came in September. And so far it has not worked. So today, as we are speaking, the Chinese Communist Party, today and tomorrow, they're going to come out with some great ideas. What those great ideas are, we'll see. And they want to boost consumption. How they're going to boost consumption, I don't know, but they'll tell. We'll come to know. And when they come out with it day after tomorrow, maybe over the weekend, we'll dissect it. But along with this, there's something else came out. It's the factory gate inflation. What is factory gate inflation? It's the prices at which goods are sold from a factory. Wholesale prices, let's put it that way, the way we understand it. It's a negative. Look at it. Right from 22 onwards, it's negative. 24, it's negative. People are making things at a loss just to sustain themselves. If this is not decline, what is decline? And mind you, all this data is from them. It's from their National Bureau of Statistics. I have not given this slide out, or I have not given this graph out. I can't even know, I don't even know how to make this complicated graph. In that GPay global thing, he comes, what about floor space under construction year on year? He's worked it out from 23 to 24. That is property. He's just taken the last 2 years after China has entered a slump. You see, the floor space has gone negative. So there's no property construction at all. They can't, because there are 80 million flats vacant. They don't have, they have too many roads, everything. Infrastructure is too much. So what is the story? 30% of their economy is property. In no other country, it is 30%. Every other country, it's about 10, 15, 20%. Okay, here it's 30%, one third. One third of your economy is at now going down at minus 12%. Have a look at it here. And what about the upstream linkages to building supplies and downstream effect to household appliances and home furnishing? After all, if you buy a flat, you'll buy a fridge, you'll buy a AC, you'll buy sofas, you'll buy furnishings. If a building is built, steel, sand, cement, all those are bought in. So all those, when you say property sector, a whole lot of thing has sat down. And Ekai Global is their story. Okay. What about this? Government expenditure year on year. From 21, 22, 23, 24, you see it's going. 2020 was, of course, COVID year, it had to go down. Then it recovered. After that, it is going down. And this, when you say government expenditure year to year, you see, what you can understand is not only the central government, even the provincial government. And if governments don't spend, the economy won't go up. As simple as that. The government is always the biggest spender in the economy. The biggest driver of GDP is the government. And here you have this government expenditure is going down. Okay. Why? They don't have money. They are in debt. The return of income on all their projects is low, zero almost, or negative. So what are these projects? You build a park, which is the government builds a park where there's construction coming up. And that construction is a ghost city. So what do you do with that park which you spent money on? Zero. If that park, if the construction had come up well and people inhabited that, that set of buildings around that park, people would come, pay something, some business will start, everything. Now everything is zero. I've just given you one example, you can take 100 more. Okay. So this is it. If this is not decline, what is? Okay. And this is something very interesting. You see this cartoon, it came out 3-4 days back. World's Factory, Guangdong. See this? It's here, it's given World's Factory in Guangdong. Guangdong is one of their major hubs, economic hubs. Okay. And this is the headline which came out. It says, "What's eating at Guangdong's greatness? China's champ is taking it on the chin." That's why that boxing graphic. Okay. So there's a problem in Guangdong. It was a driving force behind China becoming the world's factory. Maximum factories are in this Guangdong province. But in that, today vacancy rates of office buildings and factories is only getting higher, not getting lower. Okay, there are fewer orders, payment defaults, and plans to shift production capacity overseas. Why overseas? From China, there are export restrictions. They can't ship it to USA and EU and all that. So they have to take it overseas. People say, oh, they'll go overseas, build plants there, from there they'll export to USA. But that's at a loss to the chap. What about jobs in China? You, at the end of the day, no country is going to allow you to get Chinese people and build a factory there and be happily ever after and you export from there. Some countries might, but not all. Most won't. You have to hire local people. So that is unemployment in China that you can't offset. The factory owner might become rich. China will become rich, but the people will remain poor. That's the problem. Okay. This provincial economy, Guangdong, is still the biggest in China, and it is stalling as per this report. Stagnant income growth, high mortgage pressure, and weakening consumer demand. It keeps coming back, consumer demand. There's just no consumption. Okay. And finally, in this article, it says it's a deflationary situation. Once you start deflating, inflating is difficult. भाई टायर पंचर हो गया आपका, पंचर लगा नहीं रहो, आप हवा भरना चाहते हो, तो you are continuously deflated. I mean, that's the way I can put it in Hindi. और क्या बोलो? And these are the facts. Okay. Now all this, there's another report which comes out which says China's private firms are in dire straits. And why? 63% of their firms have experienced losses or their profits have reduced. They are looking at how to survive de-risking and decoupling. It's happening. We don't understand it. Just because they sold some, electronic vehicles or some batteries and solar cells, you think everything is hunky-dory. But for a person who's running a factory or running a manufacturing enterprise, if his orders are cut by 10 to 15%, it's enough for him to pack up. Okay. The third point you see, high operating costs, recurring payment arrears, and intense Nejuan. What is Nejuan? It is involution. Involution is cutting costs, diminishing returns, stagnation. And this is rampant today. See, there's another thing. You can produce as many EVs as you want, right? But EVs have done two things for China. One, there's an intense competition on EVs, so the cost of EVs are cutting down. There, the factory, this involution is taking place, and their profits are reducing. Just EVs, and then these EVs have killed the Chinese normal engine cars. IC engine cars they've killed. Okay, but these don't make up for property because the profits are less now. It's not consumption, it's export. Okay, and that's not the complete lot of manufacturing in China. China has a whole lot of things to manufacture. Your toys, zips, cardboard things, kindergarten books, anything. All these are getting hit, and that is where they're losing big time. Right? I've always maintained if China loses its export by 25%, it will sink. Somewhere there. And the last point is very, very interesting. Entrapment style crackdowns by debt ridden local authorities. So, what's this? Local governments have put a gun on all these private players' head. इतना पैसा दो तब तुम्हारा फैक्ट्री चलेगा. Simple. It's virtually they're trapped in this. That's why they've said they themselves have coined this term entrapment style. right? So you have to understand this whole story. Now you see their economy is in a bad shape, and all this just 1 week back. All these news reports, everything I'm talking of, just 1 week after 2 months of stimulus. And after 2 months of stimulus, all the Chinese guys are sitting today and tomorrow, like I said. Now again thinking, what do we do? Look at this. We all thought that PLA was great and all this and all that. So one of the pillars of Chinese strength. Okay, in China's rise, their army and PLA was going to take China to the peak, isn't it? After all, Xi Jinping wanted to have the most modern army by 2049, complete mechanization by 2027, modern army by 2035, timelines, everything. But you look at it, PLA has been a saga of sacking, sinking, and misfiring. Okay, and that's how it is. What's this? You look at it. I showed you a few days back. There was a rocket which took off. It should not have taken off, and it falls back and creates a problem. How? Wow. He's a member of the CMC who's been sacked. And of course, on the right is that submarine with science. So this is what is happening. PLA is a absolute misfiring engine. And I also showed you all these events. If you look at it, you trace the events of the PLA from June 23 to today. The number of generals who have been sacked, the number of defense ministers who have been sacked, the number of aerospace industry CEOs who've been sacked, number of universities which have been sacked, who have been prohibited from taking part in anything related to aerospace or defense. The number of what shall I say, conferences and pep talks with Xi Jinping has given to the PLA in the past 2 years. Why? They can't do Taiwan. So he's upset with them. The number of guys who are missing, theater commanders who are missing. And today, the story is very clear that the number 2 in the CMC, Zhang Yujia, is completely against Xi Jinping. So it leaves him as just a figurehead of the CMC. And if the PLA is not under control, the PLA is not under control of the CCP, then the government is also declining. I mean, people have to understand this. I take you back to the days of Mao. Mao controlled both, but he was always worried about the PLA. So the PLA used to be purged. There was this guy Lin Biao, if you remember, right? And he died in a plane crash. He was running away. In Mongolia, he died because he wanted to stage a coup against Mao. So they have a history, and that history is being repeated. Deng Xiaoping didn't do that. Deng Xiaoping kept everyone with him. In fact, Deng Xiaoping, after retirement, he left his post as a chairman of this, or he left his post as a general secretary of the party, but he didn't leave this post as chairman of the CMC. It was through the CMC and the PLA that he controlled Jiang Zemin. Jiang Zemin did it again. Now things are going against him because he's now controlled both. PLA is now rebelling. Right? So that's where things are. Okay. Now let's look at this business of population. Very important. I've done a full, you know, program on population. For the first time, this, about 1 month back, this article comes out where it said Xi Jinping has spoken about population decline in China. Well, good, he's spoken about it. So what? But actually, it comes out that he's spoken about it 1 year back. It's only put out now. Similar, typical fashion. There's a problem. First, it's not acknowledged. When it is acknowledged, it is slowly put out as if, no, this problem will happen. We can get over it and all that. Till the time comes that they can't handle it. This is a three-stage process. I mean, the way I look at it, it is salami slicing of the self. They do it very nicely on their own. We talk of salami slicing, three-stage salami slicing, geopolitically. In most cases, they do it on themselves. Okay? Right. Now let's see something else. You know why I say that that PLA article, the People's Daily article is very important. When they're saying we can't grow at 5% and all that, look at what this did. This when they knew they had a population problem. Okay, as late as 2012, 12 years back, all of Chinese demographic specialists and political scientists were saying, if you allow couples to have 2 children, your fertility rate and birth rate will go over 4%. This was their story. So continue with your one-child policy. This is as late as 2012. In 2016, they came out with a story. Fertility rate will peak in 2018. It will be 2.09. It will slowly decline to 1.75 by 2023 and 1.72 by 2050. What has come out? It is 0.9 today, or 1. In places it is 0.9, in places it's 0.9, and in places it's 1.1. But it is the lowest. And what's more, there's more to this. The increased aging and falling birth rates are the highest rates in human history. And then you say China is not declining. Look, a nation is made of people. It's not made of donkeys. A nation is made of people. It's not made of, yuan. A nation is made of people. It is not made of EVs or robots or spacecraft. If you don't have people, what is this nation? Then, just think. Start to finish. Your economy is not functioning. Your PLA is not functioning. Your people are not there. What kind of a nation is this? This is going to be a superpower. And you've been just kicked out of Syria, incidentally. Right? And then you say this is a superpower? Kexin Global, their own, specialized journal. It says, they have been undertaking piecemeal subsidy for, children. And so your birth policy has failed. They're talking of failure. I'm not talking of failure. I'm not talking of one-sided just South China Morning Post. I've got you from Yixin, Yikai Global, Kexin Global, South China Morning Post, People's Daily. All these are there. And how do you think then China is progressing is something which I can't imagine. Okay. And what about strikes? What about bank protests? What about white paper protests? They started. Unrest, social unrest is there. Look at this. What is this? Recently in Zhuhai, there's one chap who was 62 years old. He rammed into people, and 40 people or 50 people died. Another 40, 50 people are critically injured. Incidentally, that mayor, share, everyone has been sacked. That came out today's news. People went to put up a memorial. These Chinese have just rad crore that memorial. Why? They're worried because these memorials will become places of social unrest. Today, after that, there were knife attacks. There were a lot of issues. Two things have happened after this. One is these things are not being reported. Firstly, they'll not be reported. If they're reported, they're scrubbed clean. That's what. And how long will it last? One day the thing will burst. I told you also, there was a cycling, craze which started between two places. Students started going from one place to the other, 40 kilometers. Over 6 months, from June to last month, 1 lakh people were going every day at night. Initially, it was good fun. Later, the Chinese realized, oh, there's a problem here. If this continues and all these people get together and suppose there's a revolution, they caught cold feet and they dismantled that. So there is social unrest. When will social unrest start? And there are various facets of social unrest. Social unrest starts when there's a decline and there's no hope for people. Private firms don't have hope. Students don't have hope, right? Families don't have hope. They're not interested in, birthing children. Your economy is not going up. People don't want flats. Then what? If this is not decline, and then your army, which is supposed to be the greatest army on earth, you're building to that. You're sacking generals as if it's popcorn. Right. That's what I said. Spate of random killings. It's rooted in China's social and economic despair. And this is interesting. You forget this line which I've shown. Yeah. This is what now come out in the. You must read this. Understand it. I'll read it out. What they're talking of. They're talking of individuals of 8 losses. They have to be attended to, identified, segregated, and do what you do with them. I don't know. What are these people? Individuals of 8 losses. And this is a state story. The individuals of 8 losses are those facing job or investment losses, feeling lost about romance, relationship or life in general, suffering from emotional imbalance or mental health issues, and neglected young. Which छूट गया उसमें. It appears as if the entire Chinese population are made of individuals of 8 losses. And then there are groups of 3 lows and 3 sacks. What are these? They are groups of low income, social status, or prestige. That's the 3 lows. And what are the 3 lacking? Lacking social interaction, lacking social mobility, or lacking access to guidance channels. So now the Chinese party is running around helter skelter to find such people. And in a place like China, you go look around, every second, third guy will fit in this paradigm. Right? So this is where China is declining. I mean, one has to understand it very clearly. Now, this is the most interesting thing. Now, I'm going to talk of something called Japanification of China and China going the USSR way. There's a lot of discussion. Will China Japanify? Will China become another USSR and collapse? Isn't it? Let's examine both. If you don't examine both, you'll not understand what the story is. But before that, why are people examining it? They're examining it because China is going through that path. Either one will happen, either Japanification or USSR model. That there's no doubt about it. Okay. I will now get out of the scene and I will just show you this graph because this graph needs understanding. Okay. First and foremost, concentrate on this blue line. This blue line. Okay. This graph. This is the graph of Japan. And this starts when 90. Okay. I've already done, incidentally, a program on Japanification of China. You can have a look at it. And I'll put the link in this description. Okay. It was in the 90s. Okay. Look at this. In the 90s, the Japanese bubble burst. Till then, Japan was almost replacing America as the number one. Till the Plaza Accords and all. I'll not go into it, but the Japanese thing burst and the economy started going down. It continued to go down. Okay. So it continued to go down for a, this is when 1991 till here, 2008, 9, 91 to 9. You talk of 20 years, 2 decades. Why? At this point of time, it went down so low because their population shrank. That's what's happening to China now. In China, because of the speed at which things are happening, these timelines are getting contracted. And the third thing which happened was, it was when Shinzo Abe came, he started something called Abenomics. Abenomics. He started reviving Japanese economy, shifted away from the export model to consumption and things like that. I'll not go into it, but then thereafter, it has gone up. Okay, it has started going up. Now, compare this with the Chinese thing. It was in, at this point of time, during COVID, or just before COVID, Xi Jinping put the 3 red lines. Okay, I'll not go into what the 3 red lines are. It's related to factories having, enough cash flow, and they should do this, should not do this. Basically, it was basically on the property sector and infrastructure. Okay, and as it is before that, the red line is the Chinese line. The thing started going, and then during COVID, the Chinese bubble burst. Started going just after COVID, when it appeared it is going up, the population shrinking has come into play. It's gone down. So the red line is going down, and it's going down, and it will go down. Why? The population will not come out. And there's no solution for the population to come out of it. China does not have a solution for its population. If the population doesn't retrieve or come back, or there's no way that Chinese growth will reverse. So your growth is reversing. So this is Japanification. I put it in a very short form, but if you go to that, my program on Japanification, you will see what happened and what's happening in China. Absolutely the same. And in fact, the estimates are that China's population will continue to go down. They say by end of the century, it will just go down to about 80 million. It will still be a big country, but it will decline. The decline is certain. The decline has started, and they're now officially admitting it. Their GDP will never grow. If the GDP doesn't grow, and next year it will be worse, and next year it will be even worse, we all still think that China will grow? It doesn't happen that way. Okay. Now let's talk of the USSR model. Okay, yeah, this is very interesting. December 2nd, just 1 week back, the yield on China's benchmark 10-year government bond dipped below the psychologically important 2% level for the first time. This was after the stimulus. I don't know the significance of this, let me be very honest. But people say so. People say this is the red mark. It's, you can't be below 2%. Then 29 November, 1 week before that, the yield on China's 30-year debt fell below its Japanese equivalent for the first time. The Japanese is going down up, this chap is going down. So if you take this, link it with Japanification, link it with the economy, link it with everything which is happening, China is definitely going down. And then in global times, they come out, China will not be another Soviet Union, it will forge its own path. Yeah, it has to forge its own path. And the thing is, its own path will be between Japan and USSR. Where it falls, we don't know. Either it will Japanify or it will break up like USSR or something like that. Now, when you see the USSR model, this is the USSR model on the left, and you compare it with the Chinese model, there are a lot of similarities. The communist opacity hid hollowness in the system. The hollowness is completely under development. It's going up and up day by day. There was corruption then, and now in the Chinese model there is corruption. There was loss of faith in communist ideology. Is that happening in China? Slowly it is. Increasing protests, social unrest. USSR had dismal standards of living. The standards of living are going down in China too. There was elite infighting in USSR. Now the rigid control which Xi Jinping has imposed on everyone and purges and everything is to prevent this. It will start any day now. This is USSR system was so rigid it could not reform. Xi Jinping is trying to do double reformation. He wants to reform the economy in one direction and the society in another direction. It can't happen. He wants an economy which is capitalist in nature, run through state institutes. He wants people to be earning for all over the world, but he wants them to be poor. That reformation is not gelling. In USSR, Gorbachev wanted reform, but he could not reset the Stalinist model, which was in existence, back to Leninist principles. Xi Jinping has said all this nonsense, no Deng, no Mao, nothing. I will reform to state control. Now, if you have state control and you're killing the private sector, it's happening. Personalized politics stunted institutions in USSR. Same thing happening in China. They don't have any institutions. All their like PLA is in a big shake today. Then, of course, there were inefficient government-owned factories. They could not produce what the people wanted, and what people needed was not produced. In this case, people don't know what they want because they're not earning enough, so they can't spend. Supply simply didn't match demand. Yeah, the demand in a year, there is oversupply in China. It's a little different, but largely things are in place. Soviet Union could not service its debt. There's a debt bubble in China at all levels. The USSR had an over-militarized economy. Same thing with China. So if you look at it from this point of view, there is a lot of similarity between what's happening in China today and what was happening in USSR then. There's a lot of similarity between what's happening in Japan, what has happened to Japan, to what's happening in China. So you take any indicator and show me one indicator which says China is going up. Every indicator suggests to me China is going down. I mean, okay, this is the view which is very important. I must read it out to all of you. This is a view of a commoner in one of the articles I read. He says, born in the 1980s, I witnessed the hardships of older generation and the transformational rise in living standards. Chinese people grew accustomed to optimism, believing each generation would achieve better lives and the future would be brighter. But now, disillusionment looms. Hard work no longer guaranteed rewards. The once unshakable faith in diligence and progress is faltering. He says people face the harsh realities that their lives may be much worse than their parents. Many graduated graduate into unemployment with scarce opportunities and dwindling expectations. Some are on the brink of despair. This is a Chinese man saying. Now you'll say, no, no, yeah, he's just one dissident, all that. I agree. I didn't get it out of thin air. I got it out of their articles. Even one person has to say this. In a place like China, it means a lot. Okay. What else? What are the markers of decline? The way I look at it. The first marker was BRI. Why BRI? Because we didn't realize it. But if you look it back, China was not that strong. It made itself to be looking that strong. It went and deployed BRI all over. It invested in all countries. BRI is not giving them return of income. It might have given them geopolitical heft. There's no doubt about it. But BRI as a economic institution failed. Of late, you see BRI as a geopolitical tool is also failing. The very way BRI was configured without diligence actually started the failure. Many of us didn't understand it. But today, if you look back, the failure started then. But when it came out, everyone thought, oh, BRI, great thing, China is doing that, A, X, Y, Z. I think that's the first marker of decline. I mean, just look at it. How can you go and invest $60 billion in Pakistan and give it to them as loans? Pakistan has not given one naya paisa in return for all the loans it has taken. Giving anything to Pakistan is like pouring water into sand in a desert. Then you expect return of investment from them. How foolish. The second thing was COVID. The way they went about COVID, they broke their economy. The second marker of decline. And the third marker of decline, which I think is the most important thing, is in the between BRI, where they earned a very bad name. They earned the name of debt trapping, checkbook diplomacy, wolf warriorism, and all that. People lost trust. So people don't trust China. Whether it's external, and now the internal distrust is starting. The moment no one trusts you, you have to decline. A lot of geopolitics is on trust. A lot of economy is on trust. If there's no trust, there's no economy. Yeah, you might still produce a lot and sell a lot, but no one trusts you. So if no one trusts you and they only want to avoid you at all costs, at best, with your surplus economy, you can coerce them. And that coercion will take you to a point. After that, you're finished. Look at what's happened in Syria. And China is losing out in the Middle East. I spoke yesterday about it. They have lost out in Bangladesh. They've lost out in Bangladesh. The USA has upstaged them there. Sri Lanka, they have lost out. Maldives, they have lost out in our vicinity. And so many other countries. Right? So this is where it started, if you look back. What I explained so far is the culmination of all this. Go back to what Deng Xiaoping, he said in 89. And in the Chinese folklore, this speech is considered to be very important. They keep repeating it, okay, in their thinking. He says, there are two conditions which are indispensable for our development goals: a stable environment at home and a peaceful environment abroad. He says, if you don't have it, you can't grow. You can't develop. Is that there? The peaceful environment abroad is gone. It went the day he fought with India and he started posing threat to everyone. They're still fighting on South China Sea. That's a thing which I said. China is everyone, no one wants to be, its own neighbors don't want to be friendly with it. So the environment abroad, geopolitically, there's a lot of headwinds which they themselves acknowledge. The stable environment at home, I've described to you, it's gone. Social unrest, PLA problem. You take it, name it, it's there. And the second part in that speech, a lot of people in China quote this speech. China can accomplish nothing without peace and unity in politics. Very important. They are neither getting peace or unity in their own politics or a stable social order. And that is started cracking now. Stability must take precedence over everything. Okay, stability must take precedence over everything. So, is that happening? It's not happening. Okay, yeah, this is a favorite of mine. That's why I expanded it. This is from Ernest Hemingway's one of his books. He says, "How did you go bankrupt?" So the answer is two ways: gradually and then suddenly. And the way I look at it, the gradually started, and it's now approaching that suddenly part. Right? This is all I had to say. If you like this, share it with your friends. I'm not, I don't have facts and figures like Michael Beckley has, or Mr. Pettis has, or others who are China experts from the West have. I don't have theories. All I have is facts from China. And then I analyze Chinese facts. Not a single piece of this presentation today is from the Western viewpoint. It is completely from Chinese literature. Right. With this, I've done for the day. I'll take some questions. Yeah. Okay. China is like Mughal India, where it was rich and all the money was concentrated with certain families and most of the population was poor. I think you're right. Okay. China is planning a very large stimulus package for consumer. Is it true, General Shankar? Let's see. It will come out tomorrow. It will come out tomorrow. And so far, whatever stimulus they have given is gone. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to take on. I'm going to talk on only about China, and will not talk of India, China, Syria, Russia, and all. Okay. Yeah. So even if their economic might may reduce, their military might will keep increasing because in modern days, military might is determined by science and engineering base. What do you think? I've told you about their military might. What is the military might without leadership? I've shown you. I've shown you how submarines are sinking, how spacecraft are misfiring. So their military might is poor. If you think military might is great, it is not. Yeah. Yeah, I'm told that China holds 800 million of USA debts and they're receiving the interest thereon, which is this entire tax risk. Yeah, that is part of they holding some government bonds and all that. They'll this thing because this is the way the international system is, right? You buy into their bonds that which China has bought. That's not nothing very great. Okay, And I see, I'm very happy. There are a lot of Chinese who have come and they're trolling, right? And they're trying to say, see, like what he says, in 2030, Chengdu to Shigatse, shortest rail route will be complete. Then Kathmandu to Shigatse, that DPR is already finished. Red boy, your boy, my dear friend, by 2030, your population is going to be, older. You'll have 30% old people and no births. So you do what you want with your railways, stupid fellow. Okay, where does this leave BRI and Peru port? Someone is using China, Iran, Russia angle to maintain their industry of fear in the West, regardless. Yeah, all these narratives will go on. They'll look. Let me put it in perspective. This narrative that China is going to be the next superpower is all bunk. It's gone. The fact that China has got a population of around 1 million plus people, it will remain a notable country. It will have, it will be a power, there's no doubt. But it will not be an overwhelming power. That's the first part. The second part is what all projects they have started, they have to finish. Otherwise, they'll completely collapse. Right? They'll go through. They'll have this footprint going. They'll continue to enlarge the footprint and continue to externalize because internally they're short. They cannot come out of it. And I also feel that the Chinese Communist Party is now coming to a stage where it will slowly start losing its grip on people. You'll see this playing out in the next 5 years because as people's population starts reducing, their problems will start increasing. Right? And as they start losing leverage over the rest of the world, things will start going down. Things will happen. I mean, 5 years back, would you have spoken like if would you have accepted anyone speaking like this? I spoke 4 5 years back. People laughed at me. Now you are looking at me seriously. Tomorrow you will say, look how I mean I'm very sure it's gonna happen. 5 years hence when I speak, I'm going to talk about different China, which is decaying. It's not declining, decaying. Because the decay of China will start somewhere between 1930 and 1940. And we'll talk of it then. Thanks for the good info. CNA gives only good situations in China, but the condition is dire. It is. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. CCP has invested billions in buying Western media studios to academic institutions and pawn houses to propagate their baseless and false ideologues. The truth looks awkward. This is the truth. There's no doubt about it. Do you think democracy will solve a lot of issues plagued in China at this point? They Democracy, if it comes in today, there'll be a revolution. There'll be a big problem in China. China will have to sink first before it comes up. That will happen anyway. This decline is only the first step. You'll see this unfolding. I mean, all these fellows who are now coming and trolling on this on my channel is indicative of the fact that they're worried. I mean, he says China is 5 times ahead of India. So what if I'm not interested? I'm not comparing India with China. I'm talking of China per se, where China is going to go. Why? Because China will remain our enemy. We have to handle it. Where we go is a different story. But we have to handle China, whether it is 5 times ahead or 10 times ahead or not. We have to know China and handle it realistically. And we have to understand China is going to decline. Recent report from Goldman Sachs growth projection 70% homes, 65% land sales, 55% home value. Incredible. Yeah, that's how it is. They're all going down. China sinks in a decade. I'll not put it that it'll sink in a decade, but the decline will continue. It will not come back. Yeah, even less than 1% of China's growth will be much better than 5% plus of India's, as their economy is 6 times better. I agree with you, but they're not growing. Please understand, they're not growing. They're stagnating or deflating. They can say what they want, that they're growing at 10%. They themselves are admitting, I told you, the sequence of Chinese truth as it comes out. First, they'll indicate everything is okay, we have some problem. Then they'll acknowledge the problem, and then they don't have a solution. That's how it has happened. What has happened today, why I'm saying the decline is official, is the PLA daily has said, look, we can't meet the GDP target. Despite all the pumping up, despite all the falsehood. So now they have this is a thing, oh, there's a problem, but we'll solve it. And 2 years from now, they'll define the problem. And they will not have a solution. That stage has come. That's the point you have to understand. Apparently, USA and entire West also followed no child policy, but were saved by multiple diverse marriages. More than that, immigration, they allowed immigration. USA population is growing due to immigration. China will never allow immigration, because the moment immigration happens, and superiority will start getting diluted. As simple as that. So they have a social problem. We have to understand. In fact, it's a very good point you brought out. They have a social problem, which will inhibit them from moving ahead. Chinese migration to US also is affecting their growth. Even babies born in US to Chinese parents could also be more. China children will be perceived to have better future compared to born in China. Yeah, I agree with you. Look at it. You take anywhere in the world. Is there anyone who wants to go to China and settle? Who seeks a China visa to go and immigrate? No one. Who goes to China to study? Those people who want freebies, who have no other place to go, they'll go to China. That's the thing. No one wants to go to China. Okay. Yeah, what is the contribution of its military spending on drag seemingly noticed in its economy? Also, what would have been its position had China maintained peace with its neighbors? Look, I always felt that China blew its chance to become a superpower during COVID time. They could have managed the BRI, but what they did during COVID, they blew it up, because they blew up the trust factor with everyone. Okay, and they I think they stepped out a little too fast, and they became too aggressive. As a result, everyone became suspicious of them. And the way they dealt with everyone during the BRI, multiplied this problem with China. As a result, no one wants to be with China. Who sees Chinese movies? But everyone sees US movies. A lot see Indian movies. More people see Indian movies than Chinese movies. They don't have that kind of soft power. Yeah, civilizational countries never fall. I agree with you. China is a civilizational nation. It will not fall, but it will decline. That's Chinese history. If you read Chinese history, there have been periods of decline, huge decline. You have to understand. Don't just go by superficial statements. Go into the details. Why some countries still betting on BRI, especially the countries neighboring India? Is it to get back at India, or their leaders are corrupt as they expect monetary benefits? Which are the countries still betting on BRI? Nepal has not gone into the BRI despite 12 years of signing the first thing. That fellow has gone to sign a framework agreement. Let us start, see if a project actually takes off in Nepal. Sri Lanka has burnt its fingers. Maldives again is not taking any new loan. Pakistan ko chhod do. Aur kaun hai? Afghanistan, everyone said, when the Americans left Afghanistan, everyone said China will come and they'll do this, they'll do that, they'll build everything. It's been now 3 years, 4 years. Nothing has happened there. Not so easy. BRI failed because of R in BRI. They had they stuck to sea routes and roads within China to ports should have been good. Roads is far off countries and bad geographical regions is wrong, and a lot of things. They didn't do the diligence. They just went thinking they'll get everything done. They were in too much of a hurry and they lost it. Sir, convincing data being presented to show the decline of China. How wide do other countries still depend partner with China like Nepal? They don't have a choice. They're all trapped. Now, Nepal has got a Pokhara airport, which they took at a very high rate of interest and a lot of money and loan. Nepal can't repay. That airport is not functioning. Same thing in Hambantota. So these are the issues. They're stuck. All these chaps are stuck with China. As China starts declining and the geopolitical heft of China goes down, you will see things happening. Yeah, this is a nice one. Yeah, previously it was China's peaceful rise, now it's China's aggressive decline. That's the problem. When it declines the way it is, it can become aggressive. And that's what we should guard against. Okay. What will happen to the infra and manufacturing capacity built by hardworking Chinese? It will go to waste. A lot of their infrastructure is wasted. There's no return of income on it. It's underutilized. No, it will never reach its full utilization. He says, I think China is already in an economic crisis, but it is an economic crisis with Chinese characteristics. Well, Mengu, I think you're right because you are a Chinese. At least you have the intellectual honesty and to say that there's a problem. Yeah. Okay. I think the last question I'll take. Right. Sir, 20 years from now, how will they maintain their humongous infrastructure? What can be the cost to sustain? I don't know what will be the cost to sustain, but I think 20 years from now, a lot of this infrastructure will go to seed. Right? And I think China will have a major problem you know, in times to come. But why am I talking all this? At the end, we have to be very clear as to how to deal with a declining China. India has to be very clear as to how we are going to deal with a declining China. We need to have our game plan. If China has to reverse its decline, it has to externalize, and it has to externalize aggressively. And that is what we have to deal with. Right? I'll not take any more questions. There's a lot of comments, etc. With this, Today we'll close down, and tomorrow we're going to talk of India in the changing global environment, in the global flux which is changing. Do join me tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Till then, good evening and Jai Hind to all of you.